Greetings, people. It's Mr. Pooh, the Trigger, yet again on another episode of the Enlightenment series. So, this is part 2 of the previous one that I did, which is looking at the legal framework or the legal proceedings of the case between Sister Ruth Mathew versus the Commissioner of Police. That's how funny it is. We all know that the Commissioner of Police being used on the court papers or on this case is just a decoy. The actual man behind this entire suit, the actual man behind this whole case is Jeremiah Omoto for fame. Where does the police enter in a case like this? How did it happen that the police eventually became the plaintiff and Ruth Mathew became the defendant? Ruth Mathew was the one to bring this case to the police's attention. Ruth Mathew was the one who lodged a complaint to the police that my child was abducted. My child went missing at Christ Mercy City, Jeremiah Omoto's shrine. And all of a sudden, the tables turned around and Ruth Mathew is now the defendant. And the very same commissioner of police who was supposed to help Sister Ruth Mathew, who were supposed to help us find baby testimony, they are now accusing Ruth Mathew of falsely accusing Jeremiah Omoto for fame and Mercy City. This is so funny. It's so funny that we have these respectable state institutions that are being reduced to this very low level by these false prophets. These police people, these police personnel, they are supposed to be serving us, the citizens. Other than doing what they are supposed to be doing, they are out there wasting taxpayers' money. And on top of that, maybe receiving brown envelopes from the likes of Jeremiah Omoto for fame to cover up for Omoto for fame. Omoto for fame didn't want his name to be in the court. He did not want to be coming to court. He did not want to be appearing to court so that he can lay these charges on Ruth Mathew. But instead, he had to say, Commissioner of Police, take it over. You handle it. So what case does the Commissioner of Police have against Sister Ruth Mathew? The case that the Commissioner of Police have, they actually have trumped up charges, 11 charges against Ruth Mathew. All these 11 charges, they are saying you are falsely accusing Jeremiah Omoto. The Commissioner of Police, you are falsely accusing Jeremiah Omoto for fame. You are falsely accusing Emmanuel Marcus. You are falsely accusing Jeremiah Omoto's pastors. You are falsely accusing Mercy City. You are falsely accusing these people of being responsible for your missing child. Okay, I have a question for the Commissioner of Police. If she is falsely accusing, for you to reach that verdict, for you to come to that verdict, that Ruth Mathew is falsely accusing Mercy City or Jeremiah Omoto for fame, I'm sure you have something tangible, some solid evidence to back up those claims. Because you only had one thing to do as the police, as the Commissioner of Police. You had one simple thing to do, to carry out an investigation. And I believe you did, even though the report of the investigation is not in existence. You concealed it. It's hidden because I'm sure there's so many loopholes. The only grounds upon which the Commissioner of Police can be taking Ruth Mathew to court is if they have evidence that Ruth Mathew is lying or Ruth Mathew is falsely accusing or defaming Jeremiah Omoto and Mercy City. So how did you, the Commissioner of Police, reach that verdict if the investigation report is nowhere to be found? What investigations did you do that can prove that Ruth Mathew is lying? That is the only simple thing that you had to do to carry out an investigation. And the very first point of entry to this investigation or to investigating this case was to ask Jeremiah Omoto for a CCTV footage. Maybe he gave you the CCTV footage. If he indeed gave you or showed you the CCTV footage, then why are you bringing multiple witnesses instead of just pursuing the case using the CCTV footage as evidence? Because it's only the CCTV footage that can clear Jeremiah Omoto for fame. According to Ruth Mathew's testimony, baby testimony was abducted right inside Mercy City. And where she was, there was a CCTV surveillance. So what excuse does Jeremiah have? Why can Jeremiah Omoto provide the CCTV footage which can exonerate him instead of bringing multiple witnesses to side for him or to stand for him, or instead of using the commissioner of police? Why can't he just release the CCTV footage which will show us that indeed Ruth Mathew did not enter the premises with 4 children, which will show us that indeed Ruth Mathew sold baby testimony, which will show us that indeed Jeremiah Omoto and Mercy City are not liable for these accusations which we have concluded that they are false. If you do not have any of this information as evidence or any of this information to constitute your exhibit, then you don't have a case, Mr. Commissioner of Police. You really don't have a case. You're just being used by Omoto for fame to cover up for this case of baby testimony. This is a missing child. Apart from being a police department, apart from being whoever that you people are, this is a missing child. This is a case of a missing child. The least you could do, or the least you could have done, was to advise Omoto for fame, was to compel Omoto for fame to do the right thing. In as much as you all want to receive brown envelopes from him, the least you could have done was to negotiate with him, sit with him on the table as brothers, to say, listen, brother, the only way this thing can go away, the only way you can deal with a case like this, let's come up with something that just brings out the baby. That's the least you people could have done. Instead of harassing this woman, instead of arresting, rearresting, and keep on tormenting this woman who actually lost a child at Mercy City. None of you is looking at the issue of the CCTV footage. None of you is questioning Jeremiah Omoto and his security team about their negligence to provide safety precautions in their premises so that issues or cases of this nature do not prevail. If they say that this child was not lost or was not kidnapped or was not abducted inside Mercy City, they should as well show us the CCTV footage that shows that the baby was actually abducted outside the premises of Mercy City. Then we can be hands off Jeremiah Omoto for fame. There's no need for Omoto for fame to carry out all this damage control that he's doing, or for him to keep on paying state agencies, or to keep on paying televisions, to keep on paying, being rolling useless bloggers to come and defend him, or to come and run narratives to investigate if Ruth Mathew is lying, or if Ruth Mathew is not telling us the whole truth. There's no need to keep on fighting, or to keep on asking Ruth Mathew to tell us the real truth or the actual story. She told us what she knows best to her knowledge. All that Jeremiah Omoto had to do was to prove it otherwise by a CCTV footage, which can completely exonerate him. That is if he had nothing to do with it. So the commissioner of police came up with 11 charges on Ruth Mathew, against Ruth Mathew, which I believe, which I know for a fact, that they were formulated by the legal team of Jeremiah Omoto for fame. And they are just using the commissioner of police as a decoy. So let's examine the 11 charges, the 11 counts that have been laid on Ruth Mathew in the case of baby testimony. Here's the document. The charge number is written on the top there. And this is a case between Commissioner of Police versus Ruth Mathew, aged 32 years. The charges. Count 1. That you, Ruth Mathew, sometime in the month of April 2019, Christ Mercyland Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate District, did falsely accuse one prophet Jeremiah Omoto for fame, the owner of the said Deliverance Ministry, of being responsible for your missing child. Testimony Ayo. Knowing same to be false, and thereby you committed an offense punishable under section 125 of the Criminal Code, CAP C21, Volume 1, Law of Delta State 2006. And this offense alone, this count alone carries about 5 years in prison. Let's go to count 2. This first count is on Jeremiah Omoto for fame. And the second count, that you, Ruth Mathew, Sometime in the month of April 2019, at Christ Mercyland Deliverance Ministry in the Ephraim Magistrate District, did falsely accuse Miss Juliet Mathew, a security staff of Diamond Security attached to Christ Mercyland Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, of being responsible for your missing child, testimony IO, knowing same to be false, and thereby you committed an offense punishable under the section 125 of the Criminal Code, CIP C21, Volume 1, Law of Delta State 2006. And this count is on Juliet Mathew. We all know Juliet, the one that Sister Ruth Mathew said was responsible for the children's department. That's the second count. The third count, that you, Ruth Mathew, sometime in the month of April 2019 at Christ Mercyland Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate Court, did falsely accuse Miss Joy Idole for being responsible for your missing child, testimony IO, knowing same to be false, and thereby committed an offense punishable under Section 125 of the Criminal Code, CAP C21, Volume 1, Law of Delta State 2006. And this is count 3, coming from Joy Idole. Joy Idole is the owner of the hotel in which Ruth Mathew was renting during the time when baby testimony was abducted. This is count 3. Let's go to count 4. It reads, that you, Ruth Mathew, sometime in the month of April 2019 at Christ Mercyland Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate District, did falsely accuse one pastor, Ndimagada, for being responsible for your missing child, testimony IO, therefore same to be false, thereby committed an offense punishable under the Section 125 of the Criminal Code, CIP C21, Volume 1, Law of Delta State 2006. This offense again carries 5 years. And this pastor in Nimagada is Jeremiah Omoto's pastor. Let's go to count 5. Count 5 reads that you, Ruth Mathew, sometime in the month of April 2019 at Christ Mercyland Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate Court, did falsely accuse one pastor, Emmanuel Marcus, for being responsible for your missing child, testimony IO, knowing same to be false, and thereby committed an offense punishable under the Section 125 of the Criminal Code, CIP C21, Volume 1, Law of Delta State 2006. So this charge is from Emmanuel Marcus. Emmanuel Marcus, the one who took Ruth Mathew's cell phone and 72,000, is actually is actually also laying a charge, also has a charge. And then let's go to count 6. That you, Ruth Mathew, sometime in the month of April 2019, at Christ Mercyland Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate District, did falsely accuse one Elijah Etinosa for being responsible for your missing child, testimony, knowing same to be false, and thereby committed an offense punishable under Section 125 of the Criminal Code, CIP C21, Volume 1, Law of Delta State 2006, and it carries 5 years in prison. And then we go to count 7. Now here is where I want you to start observing how they come up with trumped up charges. Here we have read up to count 6. And this count 1 up to 6, the first one, it was Jeremiah Omoto. The second one, it was Juliet Mathew. The third one, it was Miss Idole, the one for the hotel. The fourth one, it was Emmanuel Marcus. The fifth one, it was this guy called Elijah Etinosa. And the sixth one, it was for this pastor Magada. These are the 6 initial charges. Remember I said the charges, they go all out to 11. So now start observing from count, is it count 7? From count 7. They are going to start repeating the counts which they've already enlisted. They are going to charge it again, but just in a different context, using different acts of the law, but it's the same charge. They did the very same thing on Cassie. It was one charge, but it was splitted in different charges. So start observing now on the count 7 to see how these people can manipulate the law and how they can repeat one charge, how they can break down one charge into multiple charges so that they can just threaten, so that they can just intimidate Ruth Mathew. She was actually intimidated the first time she saw all these charges. Because if you say each charge carries 5 years, 10 times 10 charges, how many years are those in prison? 50 years. Do you think Ruth Mathew will say, let me go to prison for 50 years? Or let me just forget about Omoto for fame? So observe this now. On count 7, there is a repetition. Now they are starting to repeat the counts, but just in different contexts, using different acts of the law. So on count 7, it reads, that you, Ruth Mathew, sometime in the month of April 2019, at Christ Mercyland Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate District, did, now they are adding, hatred or injure the reputation of one Miss Juliet Mathew. Remember, we mentioned the count of Juliet Mathew on count 2. Security staff of Diamond Security attached to Christ Mercyland Ministry, Ephraim, that she took or stole your child. That she took or stole your child. She never. In Ruth Mathew's statements, she never alleged or she never said Juliet stole Ruth Mathew's child. She never said that. Under oath, they are lying. The commissioner of police himself is misrepresenting facts, and he is the commissioner of police. If you go through all Ruth Mathew's statements, I will present her statement back in 2019, and I'll present her testimonial at Berekete. And even when we interviewed her, she never said Juliet stole her child, or she never said Juliet is responsible for the missing of baby testimony. She never said that. But the commissioner of police here is misinterpreting facts so that they can have trumped up charges against Ruth Mathew. And you think the commissioner of police is innocent? Don't you smell the coffee already? Don't you see what he's doing already? Let's keep going. He goes on to say that she took or stole your child, testimony Ayo, an injury to her reputation, and thereby you committed an offense contrary to section 374. Now this is a different section of the law. 374B and punishable under section 375 of the Criminal Code, Cap C21, Volume 1, Law of the Delta State 2006. This actually is count 2, which has been made count 7, but they've just added some false information to this charge so that the whole thing can have a little bit of weight, so that they can really pin Ruth Mathew. Let's look at count 8. That you, Ruth Mathew, sometime in the month of April 2019, at Christ Mercyland Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate District, and did with hatred injure the reputation of one Miss Joy Idole, that she took or stole your child, testimony Ayo. This count 8 is actually count 3. Is it count 3? Let's see. Joy Idole, it's actually count 3. That is being repeated just so that they can have a case. And in its repetition, the commissioner of police is misrepresenting facts. Ruth Mathew never said Joy Idole stole her child. She never said that, not a single day. We'll go through Ruth Mathew's statements that she officially wrote back then in 2019. And you realize that the commissioner of police is misrepresenting facts. He is misrepresenting facts, which is an offense. This is crime. Under oath. How do you write a statement which you have manipulated facts and you're saying something that is not what the defendant ever said? Ruth Mathew never said Joy Idole is responsible or she stole her child. She only said she stayed at her hotel. That's all. But the commissioner of police is misrepresenting facts here. This is count 8, which is a repetition of count 3, which is involving Joy Idole. In injury to her reputation, thereby you committed an offense to section 374 and punishable under section 375 of the Criminal Code, CAP C21, Volume 1 of the Delta State, and which has a sentence of 1 year. Let's go to count 9. That you, Ruth Mathew, Sometime in the month of April 2019, at Christ Mercy and Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate District, dealt with hatred or injured the reputation of Pastor Endi Magada that he took or stole your child. This commissioner of police. This is count 4. If you rewind, you see that count 4, they already enlisted this charge, this count. But they are repeating it now. When they are repeating all these counts, now they are adding some sugar and spice to say you accused this Magada of having stolen your child. She never accused these people, not even a single day. She mentioned it clear that it's 2 women who took my child. She never said Magada, a pastor, this took any of her children. Never. But we have a commissioner, an entire commissioner of police misrepresenting facts. Welcome to Nigeria. That's why Jeremiah Omoto's legal team do not want to be on the forefront of this. That's why Omoto himself do not want to be on the forefront of this, but rather they are using the commissioner of police. And they never thought this case was going to reach this far or this length that it has reached already. They thought it was just going to be swept under the carpet. They're just going to manipulate facts back in 2020, in 2019. And it was going to die a natural death. But unfortunately, Mr. PDT was on the other end. God was raising him and preparing him for a time like this. In this time, in a time like this is upon us. We are revisiting the case. We are going to get it right. We are going to do it right. And we are going to bring all these people to book. They have to be brought to book. They can't be peddling lies on a case of a missing child so that they can defend and protect Jeremiah Omoto. Impossible. It's never going to happen. The long arm of the law is going to stretch and hold them by the neck and make them confess and vomit everything that they had collected from Jeremiah Omoto for fame. If it is brown envelopes, anything, they will regret ever doing this damage control for Omoto for fame. So if you look at count 8, you realize that count 8 is just count 4 that is being repeated. So let's look at count 10. That you, Ruth Mathew, sometime in the month of April 2019, at Christ Mercy and Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate District, did with hatred injure the reputation of Emmanuel Marcus. Another repetition, that he took or stole your child. She never said Emmanuel Marcus took or stole a child. The only thing Emmanuel Marcus stole from Ruth Mathew was 70,000 naira and her phone. That's the only thing. Those are the only 2 things that Emmanuel Marcus stole from Ruth Mathew. But the commissioner of police is lying that Ruth Mathew said Emmanuel Marcus stole baby testimony. The actual thing that Emmanuel Marcus stole, they're not putting it in the statement. They're not putting it on the charges. They're actually imposing their own statements. I feel pity for this commissioner of police. That he took and stole your child testimony, Ayo, and injured to his reputation. Which reputation does Emmanuel Marcus have? And thereby you committed an offense contrary to section 374 and punishable under section 375, the criminal code cap of the law of Delta 2006, which constitutes 1 year. 1 year in prison. And this count is actually count 5, which has been made count 10. So the counts are actually 5, but they doubled them. They duplicated them by adding that you said this person stole your child. You said this person stole your child. So by saying that, you actually injured their character. So there's 1 year imprisonment for each and every other count, on top of the initial counts which are carrying 5 years each. The initial 5 counts which are carrying 5 years each. So let's go to count 11. That you, Ruth Mathew, sometime in the month of April 2019 at Christ Mercyland, Deliverance Ministry, Ephraim, in the Ephraim Magistrate District, did with hatred injure the reputation of Elijah Etinosa, that he took and stole your child, and injured to his reputation, thereby committed an offense contrary to section 374B and punishable under section 375 of the Criminal Code, Cap C21, Volume 1, Law of Delta State 2006. And it was signed here by the legal officer, Zone 5 Headquarters, Benin City, Edo State. So this count 11, again, it's a repetition of count 6. So these are the charges. These are the 11 charges. These are the 11 trammed up charges on Ruth Mathew. But if you can see from count 6 to 11, they are all made up charges. that the commissioner of police had to come up with. They have no merit. They are just trumped up charges. But of all these charges, like I said in my previous episode, this charge of Juliet, count two of Juliet has been dismissed by the court. In the previous sitting, this count was dismissed. It was scratched. It was found to be inconsistent. Everything that she said in a statement and what she said in court when she was being cross-examined, there was no consistency. Because at the end of the day, the big question was, did she come with her child to Mercy City? Yes. Was the child abducted at Mercy City? She said yes. Which means the child actually went missing at Mercy City. So the judge dismissed this charge or this count of Juliet Mathew. Juliet Mathew, the security lady that oversees the section where children, who is the patron of the children's department. So we don't have this charge anymore in the court case proceedings. And another charge which was dismissed is the charge of Pastor Emmanuel Marcus, count 5. Because when Pastor Emmanuel Marcus was cross-examined in court, his statements were also not consistent. He was asked by the lawyer the very same questions that are critical to the conversation. Are you aware that a child went missing? Did the child went missing at Mercy City? He said yes. Did it happen inside Mercy City? He said yes. Do you know the child baby testimony? He said yes. Have you seen him before? Yes. So all the facts that are needed for Jeremiah Omoto to be brought to question or for Jeremiah Omoto to be held liable, they are on the ground. All the witnesses that Jeremiah Omoto had used to come and trump up all these charges, they cannot stand in court and come up with a lie because they'll be under oath now. Remember, all these charges were laid back then when they never thought this case was going to gain this momentum or we're going to go this far with this case. So they just came up with all these charges. They did not even prepare these people for a day like a court. You know, when you are in court, you are alone now. Jeremiah Omoto is not there. When you are in court now, it's you alone, bearing a witness, claiming to be a witness. You have to give the truth to the best of your knowledge. Or else, if you're found in contempt, or else if you lie in court, you might be the one who will be sent to prison, or lying in the name of Jeremiah Omoto for fame, or to protect Jeremiah Omoto for fame. It's not worth it. So Emmanuel Marcus's testimony, Emmanuel Marcus's charge was dropped. So which means we are left with how many charges? We are left with about 4 charges. 4 charges means 4 witnesses. The one of Jeremiah Omoto for fame and the one of Joy Idole. Joy Idole has not yet come as a witness. I think she's coming. She is coming in the next court sitting. And we are left with the one of Pastor Ndimagada. And we are left with the other one of, what's the name of this one? Miss Joy Idole. So those are the only ones. And Pastor Ndimagada, I already called it out. There's this other guy that I once mentioned, Elijah Etinosa. So we are left with about 3 or 4 testimonies or witnesses who had laid charges of defamation on Ruth Mathew, including Jeremiah Omoto for fame himself. So these are the 9 counts. These are the 11 counts that they have on Ruth Mathew in this case that she's going against the Commissioner of Police. So if you have missed anything, you rewind, you take screenshots of all the counts, you also cross-examine them, you also look deep into them, and then you can see that this is just the commissioner that is, I can't say he's saving justice, I can't say he's standing for justice, he's just doing everything that he's doing to please Jeremiah Omoto for fame. This is actually Jeremiah Omoto's legal team approach to dealing with any case that involves Omoto being accused of anything. This is their formula. This is how they handle all of their criminal cases. If you look at this pattern, it's more or less the same as the pattern that they used on Kasi Chukwu when they arrested Kasi Chukwu.
Sir, what do you have to say around Pastor Kasi?
Well, it's unfortunate what happened because I didn't expect it. Out of 10 count charges, why would you plead guilty to not guilty to 9 and then come and plead guilty to 1? The particulars of offense, everything is the same. The same. So if you're guilty of one, automatically you're guilty in the rest of it. And from day one, my position is let them prove they are guilty. It is not for the accused person to prove his innocence or to prove his guilt. If they have their file, let them bring it. Cyber stalking is not such a serious crime.
They came up with about 10 charges, and the charges were just the same, but they were just broken down into different charges. So that when Cass is reading those charges, you become afraid. Say, oh, so I'm going to spend this long in prison, and each charge will be carrying about 5 years, a 5-year sentence in prison. So when Cass saw those charges, he couldn't deal with it. He couldn't stand. That's why he had to buy into Jeremiah Omoto's demands. That's why he had to apologize, and that's why he had to say, no, I can't pursue this, I can't do this. So the very same approach that they used on Cass, the very same approach that they used on Ruth Mathew back then, with all these charges, they're just for intimidation. Because once you admit to one of them being guilty, it means you're guilty of the rest. Unfortunately for Sister Ruth Mathew, she did not fall for this useless trap, because she has people like you, she has people like me who are standing in her corner, who are standing and fighting, on her behalf. But what I want to leave you with for now, before we get into the other statements from Jeremiah Omoto for Fame, which are backdated to 2019, I just want to give a warning to the Commissioner of Police. We know you are being used, and to the Commissioner of Police, we are coming after you, and we are going to dissect you, we are going to open you up, we are going to bring you to the public so that the general public and the entire department is aware of what is happening, because they never thought this would come to light. They never thought this case will reach the level that it has reached now. But I think it's high time that everyone connected to this case, everyone that is doing all they can to sabotage baby testimony's justice, everyone that is obstructing baby testimony's justice, they should be brought to book and they should dance to the music, including the Commissioner of Police. With this evidence, with this information on this document, on these charges, trumped up charges, it's clear that the Commissioner is not performing his rightful duties as he should, but he's actually under the influence. He's not standing for justice. He's just being used as a forefront by Omoto for Fame. So we are going to examine him himself in his own personal capacity. We are going to bring him up here and we are going to analyze. We are going to call him out. And if there is anyone in Nigeria who has this kind of influence or certain influence, this is the time for us to be making real serious phone calls, to reach out to the serious departments, to bring all these corrupt individuals to book. So with that being said, let me let you digest part 2 of the legal proceedings of the case between Ruth Mathew and the Commissioner of Police, aka Jeremiah Omoto for Fame, and understand it. Leave your comment below in the comment section. And on the next segment, let's look at the statements that were written by all these witnesses and Jeremiah Omoto for Fame himself, so that all you can know where we are coming from and where we are going. With that being said, I'll check you out on the next episode of the Enlightenment series. We will find baby testimony. It's Mr. Pull the Trigger. I'm out.